Okay, I was kind of wondering where I'm going to start all this because there's so much information out there, and I think everybody knows that, right? Just a glut of information. It's really, it's almost, I can see the internet as almost being a tool of darkness and possibly a tool of good. If you got something to upload that mainframe virus, you can put something in there that's actually good, because it can dispel a lot of bad things. But the problem with, I think what's out there, a lot of people have probably leaned on it as a tool. You ever watch people in downtown Toronto? They're on their cell phones. They're walking across streets.
Yeah.
You ever see them?
Yeah.
If you went and saw this 10 years ago, if you could even look from 10 years ago, it'd be like Noah dropping into this planet right now and looking at it and saying, do you think you wouldn't go into shock? It doesn't make any sense. But there's people doing that, and they'll walk right across and violate any law of common sense and safety. And I've watched it. I've seen people walk right in front of cars and trucks. I'll watch them, and I've seen them in food stores, and I didn't know at one time that, you know, those ear little pieces? I thought people were nuts. I was watching them go, I said, man, I do that kind of in my head, but they're doing it vocally. So there is some strange things going on, and we really don't have a grounding to knowledge. So instead of going upwards, we're going down. And a friend of mine in the audience would know, because he told me about that. He says, Dan, when people get a degree, they go down, they don't go up. They're D-grade, so they won't agree. So we debate everything, so we're all master debaters. And then we take the caps off of our pens and we start to pull our own chain, really. Because a stiff pen has no conscience. Because it wants to direct a movie, it has no idea what's going on. Okay? So there are many things that are happening out there. I don't think people are seeing them. We were joking around the room before I came on with a couple of guys, and we're just, you know, like, where would I take anybody down this path? Because what happened was, and I recommend people to do this, what you probably really need to do is a good holistic cleanse, but you got to do it mentally. You can do a body cleanse, and I did a 42-day fast last year. I never did a fast before, so I had no idea what was going to happen. But I was determined that I thought something was wrong with me anyways, and I just wanted to get rid of a lot of bad backed up stuff in my colony. Because our colony is all backed up right now. Okay, and that's what everything's all about right now. We're not cleansed. We don't see, and the seat of motivation is the liver. So you can understand about the delivery. So I always talk from my gut, so I don't prepare any notes here. So there's nothing. There may be the odd little thing I was jotting down, but I do that anyways without doing a seminar. So we have to really start looking at what's happening. Did we really wipe the slate clean? Did you do your due diligence? Did you really examine something? Did you really go and see if something is what it is? So whether we're talking about, you know, the Bible or the dictionary, there's definitely some rules and some basics going on. So it's a lot of times better to step out for a moment and look in. Just be an observer. Because you can see a lot more if you're not caught right into the middle of what's going on. We've kind of jumped into acting now, for the average individual who may look at that, they may see only that word there for the moment. But when I go like this, there's two words in a word there. So that's a char actor. That's a burned actor. So I see someone who's burned. I can take that down to the next level, and burned in slang in English really meant misplaced trust. Is that kind of making sense? So maybe if I'm playing the full character, then I may have a misplaced trust right off the top. So I've already been burned. It's really neat on the coins. They put trust in God right in the U.S. We trust in God. Do they really? Or do they trust in man? Is man God? I don't think so. What's man ever done? I said, people tell me, oh, they're creators. I said, nice try. What have you ever created? They have creators of movies, right? Well, that's for a movie. If you want to believe that, what do? How did they make the film? How did they get the ingredients to make the film? It had to be from things that were already there. All we do is move things around. So we mix things up. You know what man's really doing? This is a really good, really blasphemous thing. We call it this. Recreation. It's not creation. Watch out for those RE words. That's like resource. Wasn't it a source to begin with? How could you make it a resource? That's like renew. It can only be new once. Something's only new once. People tell me they're going to retire. I said, well, you must have been tired before. So I hope you're getting a little humor in here because we have to. If we can't laugh at this to learn, we're not going to get through this. So we have to start looking at, could this be a logical theory that language, and it's been explained, there's been a lot about intellectual property, that these letters actually are letters? Well, what's a letter? Well, that's a message, right? Well, a message would tell you something, correct? So that means that if I don't know what all these mean, and to run a hierarchy, you have hieroglyphs, right? I looked up the word hierarchy. It led me to hieroglyphs. So then this whole thing is hieroglyphic. Didn't you ever wonder how they came up with these crazy letters? It baffled me that I'm using something that I'm using as a law of language, and I don't know what it means.
You're under a spell.
So could there be two U's? Well, maybe that's a double U. And I know that the letter L, when I researched it, meant God. And I'm not going to go down how I found that out because you have to do your due diligence. And I always tell people, if you don't do your due diligence, then you haven't taken the effort, because you need to take a little bit of effort on this. It's important. And Gary was talking about it. You need effort on this. Whether you're feeding yourself, he was talking about feeding yourself with food, but it still took an ability from up here. And God said he's not in any man-made temple, and you are the temple, so why are you looking for him in a building? I don't get it. Don't people go to a lot of buildings looking for God? So you have to go down a due diligence to find out what's going on there. Now, if I took this word and took it down the path of what it really means, and I will say it, you're going to need to find out how I found that out, because we could take 2 or 3 hours on the messaging through the alphabet. What do you think they call it an alphabet? It's called the first bet. And I bet you don't know what's going on. And if they're using the alphabet in the court of chancery, the chances are you're not going to know what they're saying. So I said, I don't know anything, so I'm going to wipe the slate clean, and I'm going to take a black marker and write on a white background so I can see the darkness. Now, if I want to write on a blackboard with a white chalk, then I'll see the light. But you only get mail that deals with black on white background. So they're writing to you in darkness. And you receiving, now I know I'm using this for camera purposes only. I'm not using this because I wanted to write in black today, but you see, if you write in black, you will be black. These letters have meanings. So at times I hold back. Mark says, don't hold back, Dan. It's his favorite thing to say to me. But I said, it's very difficult because I can understand I'd be like a tornado coming through at you. And it wouldn't be fair, right? That's not right. If I'm trying to help you, I have to have patience. You see, to be a healer, you have to have patience. But you see, if I become impatient, right? Well, isn't that I'm a patient, really? So it's different. So I need to have patience, but of course a healer has patience, right? He's got lots of patience coming through. I may spell it differently, but that's the reality of it.
You know, it's just amazing that you just said that, because something came to me a few years ago. There's 7 green trees that grow in North America, and when you take the letters of them, it says, you can see help, just be patient. And the first letter of each tree makes the sentence.
Yes. Wow. And I think we probably heard there's even patterns. You cut open a certain fruit, or you cut up a certain vegetable, and it's got like it looks almost like a part of the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tell you that's for that. You think that's by chance? So
isn't that like with your ear? There's a pattern on the womb of the baby.
that's right.
That's like that.
And we're kind of
Golden.
the best I can really see this is, you see, a movie is based on motion. So we know that we have a lot of emotions, right? And I tell people the problem with society is they're very emotional. Because we're always trying to put motions into the court, right? So everything's static because when you were born, everything was done under the Vital Statistics Act. So you were a statistic right from the beginning. That's a casualty. That's why they needed insurance. Don't give me that deer in the headlights. Okay? Man couldn't guarantee jack squat. Okay? So, he could be really a guy with the name Bob Manure. Okay? Fertilizing a field of dreams. You have to see what's going on, because if you don't know that, this could get really overwhelming. So, do you understand what we're talking about? We got to go really slow on this. Because where do I begin now? Because now we're talking about language. And the closest I could get to it when I started to begin down this, I said everybody was fascinated with the statement of birth record. When that came out, oh my goodness, everybody was on that. And I said, well, okay, maybe I'll go down that as my first thing, because I said that's the first thing supposedly that ever happened to me, I thought. Someone wrote a record on me. Not an accord, that was a record. Because an accord's a covenant. So they had to cut the umbilical cord and then made a record of an accord. And then my mother had all the labor. She fulfilled all the terms and conditions on the covenant. So I must have been part of the income to be the outcome. Is there a lot of biological things going on here, guys? Was it a stiff sentence? Do you see men? The birth canal, the port of authority down Toronto. You see all these things? I started to see the Bay Street. I saw the front where all the banks were. Well, they must be fronting all this. And then I got very affronted at one time in my life because I started to sign. So I was fronting it. And then sometimes I found out I was signing the back of things, so I was backing it. I was the back and the front. I couldn't figure out if I was the head or the horse's ass. I think when we kind of go down this, I think, doesn't it kind of make you feel a little easier that you may just kind of be on a journey of knowledge? Just relax, really. It really is. I kind of felt that if I beat myself up on this, I wasn't going to learn. You know, how many people, I had employers in the past, that was their way of doing it. He goes, I taught you everything, and you still don't know anything. I said, well, that's not going to go anywhere. But we tend to do that because we tend to go in a position that we have to do this idea that we know everything, and then we're going to go and tell everybody else what to do. And I said, I'd rather just be the receiver. So when I was reading out of, I'm saying it's up to you to do your due diligence on it, but there is a Matthew Henry's commentary. This is probably about a 300-year-old commentary. There's about 6 volumes. You can get this reproduced. It's not expensive. It's like maybe about $30 sometimes. I've been as high as 60, but at the end of the day, the wealth that's in there in the 6 volumes, because this was someone who was talking to you not for private gain, so he wasn't making private interpretation of the King James Bible. Okay, the man dedicated himself to charity. So there was no gain. He was distributing everything he had really to the poor who didn't know. But in it, I could see the direction. That someone was not making a private interpretation. He was giving. He wasn't trying to take. But one of the things he said in it, in one of his scriptural comments he made, was that if you want to be a teacher, he says, you first have to ask God to teach you first.
I agree.
So you need to pray for that first. Don't go out there trying to be the God. That's like the guy throwing himself in the middle of the river who's never gone swimming before. And then he's complaining when he's bumping up along the rocks and everything else. No one told him to jump in. It'd be like someone doing a polar plunge and they've never gone swimming. You can imagine the shock to that. Let alone someone who knew how to swim a little bit and then went in there. So there's things that we don't see. There is cause and effect, and you're more than not the direct cause of your own injury. And you see, when you have injury, that's a tort. And then you go into the court, and they may try you by jury, which is perjury, because per means by jury. So maybe when you're speaking, you're having all those things happen. Injury and perjury. And perjury is basically telling a lie, right? Which would be witnessing against yourself. I even looked up the word summons one day in the Canadian Law Dictionary, and it said it's a witness. I said, well, just a second here. I received a piece of mail, and mail's war, and I got a post, which could be an impost on post, which is a tax. Getting that deer in the headlights look again. You'll slow this down in real slow mode later. Okay, but I received it in the mail and it said, summons to appear. Well, I just read that in the Canadian Law Dictionary it said that a summons was for a witness. I said, well, then I'd be going to the court to witness against myself. So I must be beside myself, witnessing against myself. And I'm starting to think these things, and I said, I think I am insane, or this whole thing is insane. And when you start to take it down this path, because what you're doing is you're taking an examination, right? You're examining yourself. That means, kind of, I would take the X means you're going out. So instead of being part of the nation, you're an examination. Which leads to kind of being beside yourself. Looking in. And don't tell me you ever had a lawyer going on your hole because he went on your behalf. If he could go on your hole, well, then you really are getting screwed. Okay? So, there's a lot of things, there's a code in the language. Don't feel bad you didn't know. Okay? And everything's published, so everything is at the bar tender. Right? Oh, I thought that was a joke one time. I thought that when lawyers are called to the bar, believe it or not, it was. When I went through Bouvier's law and the whole thing, they said that the actual, when they're called to the bar, there was actually meals they went through in a process of some ceremony. You would have to have them full of spirits to do the crap that they're doing. And then they bench the guy who knows it all and they stick him up on the bench. Now he's benched. What do you do when a guy's playing the game? You bench him, man, when he does all the things at a point that he's no longer of any useful to be on the ice. And of course the lawyers always work out of their off ice. They can't do it on ice. Oh, and you think that's funny, and you went to a departmental, right? Wouldn't that be funding a mental? Do you think it's not all insane?
I didn't know.
I know Ralph knows what I'm saying. He's looking down now. Because he knows what I'm saying.
What can I say?
He knows. Because he said, Dan, it's all in the Word. So if you don't know what the words are, we're into a whole ridiculous confusion. And I said, oh my God, I'm going to look up the word confusion. So I did. And I hope I have a brush here. Okay, so we'll look up the word. Does anybody need any of this insanity here before I take it off the board? Okay. Confusion. Do you know what that means?
Using the cone.
Well, when I looked it up, it actually said putting two things together that really are not really supposed to be there. That's my slang way of telling you. But it also means this. Merger. Is it possible that the confusion that's going on is based on things that shouldn't be together, but we're trying to merge them together? So did you merge something? Did you do a corporate merger? And you're probably looking at me, there's that deer in the headlights look again. What could I have possibly done as a corporate merger?
Yeah, you did.
Well,
And then,
this is where the movie can get a little confusing. Because when we're merging two things together, there would have to be two things to begin with that we're merging together. And I looked up what our society is. So this will really make sense to you. This should. What is described as the type of government that we live under is called a mixed war. You don't think there's a war going on out there? You haven't looked around. You think, how many people in a poll here would say there's peace out there? You think there's peace? Well, it could be on the illusion. Looks like it. Like there's not people dropping nuclear bombs on anybody, at least on this soil yet. But a mixed war, and I'm just going to read it so you...
What's the source? What's the book you're reading?
Black's Law, 4th edition. I'm only going to this because there's some hilarious things in here. Don't ever say that they were hiding anything. The guys that are writing this stuff, that's funny. They ain't hiding anything. It is out there. They even published the nonsense.
That's no sense.
That's right, because there is no money. But we're all chasing that money that we say there's no money. Okay, so here's, oh, I have to look under war. See, they don't put it always in the place you think, so could be another memory on that. War. You know what war means? Just by the way, if I broke down the code on this, that's W. Well, you'll know why it makes sense in a second when I tell you this code. That's W, absolute head. That's like W, there's two of you in charge. Sounds like good and evil at war. Well, here's war, mixed war. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by the public authority and on the other by mere private persons. Does that not feel what you're going through right now?
Mhm.
Wasn't that the greatest explanation? So you got private persons on one side, and you've got basically a public authority on the other side. Now, the public authority you run into, what do you think they are? Who are you dealing with, though they won't deal with you? Because I did one day call government legal services, and they said they don't give any legal advice to the public. I didn't get that. Then I couldn't be part of the government. They said that they only gave legal advice to the government, they didn't give legal advice to the public. Then the public couldn't be part of the government. So then I realized the public wasn't what I thought it was. Now we're going down the democracy game, though. Isn't that a really screwy way to think? Because democracy says that it's all in the power of the people. Well, who the heck would want to take on that risk? Every one of us in this room is going to run the government amongst ourselves as an aggregate. We're all joined together, and we're all going to get along. You believe that? Do you actually believe that's going on out there? Do you really believe we have one really wonderful aggregate melting pot of everybody together and we're all happy and we're hugging one another? People call and complain about their neighbor with a fence 1 foot over its limit.
Less space than that.
The dog shit on my lawn. So if the public side is really not the public, couldn't it be a reverse that really the privates are the public's the private? Maybe it's just a mirror. Maybe it's an illusion. Maybe it's confusion. So then I went further, and then I realized that a government that operates with military terminology, so we've got Attorney General, Governor General, Solicitor General. Registrar General. We got a lot of generals. No, there's no war going on, guys. Lieutenant, Governor.
Commanders-in-chief.
Come on. There's no war going on. What do you need all these guys if there wasn't a war going on? Now, interestingly, there's a word that matches the government that has these people in place. That's called a stratocracy. Write this down. If you got mixed war down, write down stratocracy. You can go to a dictionary on it.
Put on the board.
Okay. It's like democracy, but it's called stratocracy.
Straw or stop?
Sorry, you're right. Stratocracy.
SRT or STR?
It's S. Oh, sorry, I did it again. I messed up here. I got my syllables all mixed. Okay, so here we go. Let's just do this all over again.
Same
Oh, I
thing.
did it again. I'm losing it here. Okay, there you go. Okay, so it's strat. Key word, strat. Now, that is a government, which means army, which is arms. Okay? Right? There'd be no war out there if anybody wouldn't bear arms, right? because you couldn't give them a hand without arms. Forget about the final revelation being Armageddon, when all the nations under democracy go against God. Because the Gog of Magog, spoken of in the Revelation, or spoken of in Ezekiel, Gog meant democracy, by the way. Isn't that hilarious? It was the personification of all the democracies together warring against God at the end. They're going to take God on. Isn't that nice? You're going to go and kick the ass of the Creator? How stupid is that? The guy of all energy, the all-powerful source, and we're going to go tell him what to do. Well, we've had our time, guys, and it's been really, really crappy. There's been a lot of manure on that field. So we've got basically a government of military chiefs. So that's what that means. I can read it out of there if you want, just for, because I know a lot of this stuff is being videoed, and sometimes it's better to actually just read it out of there so someone can see it later, because a lot of times what's happening is we don't have a due diligence going on. And in the video, sometimes it's very difficult. It's like Gary going in on holistic medicine, or anybody else that's been involved in that, and having to go and show them how they've come about what it is, because we're not talking about 1 hour, we're talking about thousands of hours. This is where it requires you to do your due diligence, because you can go to a dictionary. And believe me, no one wants to know anything, because half the dictionaries I found were thrown out for 50 cents. No matter how thick they were. Or $1. You didn't have to go and get them from somewhere where they're going to sell it to you at full price. So knowledge is even being trashed out, because there's so much junk out there, because we're all junkies. That's all this nation does, is collect junk. Because the money's the drug. Isn't everybody chasing the money? So, stratocracy it says a military government. Now you tell me there's not a military government out there right now where you're around. That's not a military government? A government by military chiefs and army.
To support what you're saying, if you get on Dun and Bradstreet and look up City of Hamilton, it will tell you commonly traded as Hamilton Police Services.
Right.
Right there. And there will be that for every place in the nation.
So, how many people do you know that have ever done a seminar, ever even wanted to give you that? Did they ever tell you that?
Never.
I've been everywhere. I've heard as much nonsense and manure I could ever take. And most of the time what someone's doing is, and we're not saying that it's not appropriate at times in some circumstances, and we're not getting in here trying to judge anybody. But we're saying when guys are doing this is a whole new ball game. Because when you're a teacher, okay, you're teaching something, and then you're doing this. It's different. In this situation here, we're talking about law. This is getting a little on the spiritual side now. I got this based on something. And more than not, most of the books that were dropped on me were given to me as a gift, charitably. And whatever I had in my pocket, I always considered it was $1 I didn't have yesterday. And if I went out and got a book that was being thrown out in some bookstore or reuse it store or whatever it was, I considered that was a pretty good gift considering what it would have been going for. So my concern on this particular situation is, so no, I'm not talking about people that are not, I'm glad you guys didn't get scammed on this one. Because no, we didn't charge you $250. You know why? because it's wrong to hoard knowledge, in a sense. Because when you're talking to people on the law, that's a dangerous game. You're talking about law, right? Do you know the only guys who have the license to hoard the law? The head prostitutes. They're called this. And the only warning I got about them was, woe unto ye lawyers.
I shall be judged by higher account, for you knew the law.
That's right. So to sell what I'm doing to you, to me, would be an abomination. So I'm just going to give it to you. Sometimes what I give to you may not go down well at first, okay? I'm not forcing you to swallow it, but hopefully you'll understand, because it's, you know, I consider receive free, give free on this. And so I took the time, and I was required to do that, to take the time, to do due diligence. So I'm going to bring you back to a time when man first went down this stupid trail. Well, some went down this trail, stupidity, God regretted having made man. And I'm not going to get into whether it's metaphorical or true, because I don't want to get into that at this moment here. But you see, in the story, or in the account, you see everything's like an account, eh? Isn't that amazing? It's like accounting. So we have an accounting of an account. We even speak of most things in historical records as an account. Well, that's AC, right? Alternating current count. Oh, you just think this guy's insane, right? Because I'm just trying to tell you, okay, there is something going on in the account I'm about to tell you with. You see, man at the beginning had a guy. Now remember, in Hebrew, this wasn't his name. We transliterated that into hieroglyphs. See, English is an imperfect transliteration of Hebrew, which was a pure language. And if you go down some journeys on the Hebrew language, it almost looks like DNA when you blow it up. But the people couldn't have known they were using DNA at the time when they were writing the Hebrew language, putting it on paper. It actually looks like a DNA code, a DNA strand. How would someone who doesn't have a microscope know they're writing in DNA? Everything was about blood, right? If you're talking to Muslims and Jews, isn't everything about blood? Sacrifice? They know. They're all agreeing on the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah. They're not arguing about that. Even Christians, you got 3 people, 3 groups that are probably one of the largest in the world to an extent, all agreeing on the same thing. It was all about blood. If I told you what blood was, the way I see it in language, that's B, God, balance, door. Makes sense to me. It's a good feel of the word. B, which is exist, God, blood, door. Well, come on now. Blood is what circulates everything, correct? They even say when you kill someone for the wrong purpose in a feud, and you've made unjust gain in it, that's blood money. So, after Adam, that's an Adam, right? Oh, maybe he created an Adam nation. A dam? Everything's backed up. And it got so bad that in the account that arrived at Noah, God said to put everything kind of into a ship, an ark. And he saved everybody in, the souls were saved in that. 8. But in the ark, it got so bad that before that, it said in the account that was in the Bible that there was a canopy around the earth. there was not any rain. It had never rained on man. And then God kind of burst the bubble. And then before that, he gave man what was due, right? Gave him the due. He still gives you the dew in the morning. But it came so apparent that man didn't know who God was anymore, and God regretted having made man, that he had to rain on him. Right? What language could you pull this off with? You think there isn't a higher power involved in this language? There's no language like this. The intellectual property of England, and England was a tribe of Germans. And German meant brother. It's a German. They were Gentiles. But if you understood the story or the account of Noah, there was Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the Shemites were the Jews and the Arabs. But it said that Japheth was the firstborn, even though he didn't get the firstborn right in the same way, because Shem got the better deal later through the Abrahamic covenant, because that's where the Shemites came through. But the white Germanic race came through Japheth. Okay? And it said that Japheth would be in Shem's tent. Now, if you do not believe that there is a white Germanic race running things, along with a bunch of Semitics, you haven't looked around the world. I hope some of this is making sense. This is very simple historical things. You could check in the best of best what we have, along with historians, and then go into the book, which is a lot easier to read the smaller book than the bigger books, right? Because maybe God kind of had a little bit of empathy with it, and he said, you know what? You're not going to remember all those other books that are up on the shelves. Even the lawyers don't read their own books. You know that? I went into lawyers and said, you read all this stuff? I had them even tell me, I'll sell you it. He said, you want a Black's Law? We don't use it. Okay. So it appears they weren't reading it.
You mentioned about you don't think that that guy's in his tent. You know, on this DVD, thrivemovement.com, he plainly shows that the Rothschilds fund the main court in Israel. They fund it. They actually pay to keep all the things and everything going. So that's just clearly showing exactly what you're saying.
And to date, the balance of the population of the other genetics of man have been actually used in a slave-like position, which is very sad. And if there was not a reason for the New Testament or the New Will, which broke down the barrier to bring everybody back together, right? Was there really a race, or was there grace? Fighting for title, the gloves in the ring, the boxing, we all box in democracy because we're filling everything in boxes. Or maybe the gloves, we throw down the G-loves to forfeit the fight because we don't want to fight, right? Could anybody be fighting if they didn't want to put on the gloves? Throw down the gloves then. How does anybody have a war without a gun? I don't get it. If I don't bear arms, no one would be participating. And people blame, oh, we got to go kill those guys. Well, why don't you just stop energizing the guys who want you to do that? I hope this is kind of like grounding and making sense. Now, it doesn't mean that the rest of the world's going to listen to you. They say, you rotten people being peacemakers. You see, the other side are peacekeepers. When the peacemakers aren't being peaceful, then they basically use guns to kill them. Remember Cain? Am I my brother's keeper? He was the first guy to strike somebody. Oh, here's a problem. Isn't a Cain a lien? You lean on it? These are English hieroglyphs out of original language. That book's a code. And no, you aren't going to get it from the people that are involved in using it for money. Because they just run a collection plate. There's no grace in there. The largest misrepresentation of it keeps on doing the Mass every Sunday. For the masses, and the mass is the mob. That's how we run democracy. Mob rule. That's a crime ring. Are you clicking on this? And the best thing I can do to ruin something as good is to bastardize it, right? Make it look bad. Make it look so bad. That bad Christ. Yeah, he went out there, he shot the Romans. Didn't you read that in the book? He shot them, right? He brought down myriads of angels and kicked their Roman butts. No, I didn't see any of that. He was a peaceful guy, right? He was trying to show you the way. That's why the Romans called it the way. And a way is an easement for a man to walk. Ever seen road allowances? 33 feet one way, 33 feet the other way, and a line going right up the middle? You know, it's a road allowance so a man can keep walking through property. By chance, it gives you enough feet on either side of the road allowance. How much feet could I use in 33 feet on either side of a center line? Count 33 feet that way and 30. That's pretty generous. Because no man could be prevented from reaching property. Promised land. The meek will inherit the earth. Not the air again. Ever seen those commercials? Let go of my ego, I'm in my ego. It's unfortunately a very, very confused world. And so, if I don't understand the language, wouldn't it make sense that there's a lot of confusion? Wouldn't that make sense? Look how many languages out there. How many people, I mean, I'm just counting here. If anybody would just say, if you're from a distinct language and you could just say what it is, and we just go one at a time in sequence, let's just see how many languages are in this room. And I'm saying ones that you may speak or you have direct relatives that speak it. Anybody? Like, we'll start over there. Language background?
Croatian.
English.
Okay.
Italian.
English.
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 You got a lot of English in here. They got an angle. Watch out for them.
Austrian.
Okay.
My first language I spoke was French, and I speak some Algonquin.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? You just say it.
French.
Okay.
Iranian.
Rainy. Okay. Anybody else?
Italian.
It's a lot. So that's a lot of backgrounds, right? Isn't that a lot of confusion in the world? Does that really make sense? Did we really need to have more than one language? Now, the only history of language, the only explanation that I've dug, I've looked for it. I tried to get to the bottom of a lot of things. I wanted to get to the bottom line. I wanted the net, not something that's gross. I wanted to get to the very bottom. And it appears that the only explanation, which a lot of people will say, okay, fine, we'll go with myth, the Bible, they're going to say that. But, you know, that's, again, but there's no other explanation. It happened back at a place called Babel. In the ancient city of Babylon, there was this idea that some crazy guy who wasn't too far off of having had enough knowledge about a cataclysmic flood that survived with 8 people carrying all the gene pool of mankind, had basically wanted to build a tower. And it said he was a hunter of men. Well, that's someone very military. Because the only time you hunt men is with weapons. So he was carrying on something that wasn't good. And it didn't take too long because he was the great-grandson of Noah called Nimrod. And Nimrod was the founder of Babel, which is Babylon, where all the languages were confused. So I said, wouldn't the English angles, who always have an angle to tell you something, hook, line, and sinker, they're hookers, always put bait on the hook, and I reel you in by a line? Oh, you'll never find more hookers than in England. We got lots of street walking there. Go downtown Toronto, the English language commerce is all in English, right? Come on. So, basically, that story gave you a name. And I said that's where God confused all the languages, so everybody could just babble on. Do you think that's by chance? Am I just some stand-up comedian just throwing this out? Well, I will insanely screw your mind so badly with probably 90 hours you haven't seen, with coincidences that screw my mind. I jump out of my body not to listen anymore because it's that bad. That's how bad the download is. Because when I found out that's what was going on, none of the crap that I was told before made any sense anymore. It was all nonsense. So you have to wipe that slate clean. Because the journey on this is you got to cleanse. You got to detox. Because there is so much polluted information out there that is considered common thought for the commoners. And if you want to understand the word common and pollution, that word, most of the time where I went and looked it up, not in the convenience store dictionaries, but the fairly decent sized dictionaries that had a lot more knowledge to share, said that meant lewd, prostitute, polluted. Now you know why we got so much pollution out there. You have a House of Commons, right? How more polluted could that be? So we've got a whole bunch of guys trying to control all the pollution. We even have a Consumer Protection Act. Well, consumer means those that waste and destroy. Why would we have an act to control or protect those that waste and destroy if it wasn't for a purpose of something illicit, right? Something bad. How much more crap could we stick into the air, stick into the water? We flush our toilets and then we expect to draw the same water back out of a source we pooled it all into, and we stick a little bit of chlorine in it and we put a few filters on it and we go, wow, clean water.
Don't get me started, Dan.
This is completely ridiculous. We are actually shitting into and manuring into our source of life, correct?
Obviously.
The air is so polluted in Beijing, they have 2-kilometer vapor clouds floating over the city. And little children, not showing up on the news, are wearing gas masks. But you don't see that on the main reports. Taipei in Taiwan is so polluted from the industrial waste that's going on there that there is a vapor cloud that never moves because it sits because they're below the mountains. So it just hazes like California on top. It never goes away. People breathe it all the time.
You know, it says in the Bible that there'll be 2 places on earth that the sunlight will not hit the ground. It's so dark.
I mean, does this really make like any sense? That this is great? And then I go, well, if I'm participating in something as an aggregate, because that's what we do, we all aggregate everybody together. And they say, well, I got to participate. Well, wouldn't that be part of the problem? The greatest day would be that no one went to work. Sat around and did something real. Something that did not require probably electricity. It did not require anything out of the energy of your body. That didn't require any outside source that could pollute or do something to the soil or to the air or to anything around you. Now you tell me a day where that goes on. Would it not be the minority that does that? There's a very small minority out there that's waking up to this and go, there's something wrong out there? Well, look at minority. Isn't that minor? You know, a minor is a child. Maybe you won't get this if you're not a child. But you see, the people that moved their way up, once they left this, you see, a minor could not be a major, and a major's in the army, right? So a minor's not in the army. You don't have any minor titles in the army. There's no minor. Though we have a lot of these crazy people that are doing a lot of this, which is a minor. Right? Do you think there could be a lot of crazy stuff going in here that this guy maybe not as sane as he looks? Don't worry, I don't whine about this anymore. I just go with Dale and drink wine. Because I know there's win in wine. There's got to be something good in that word. Red wine's an ancient thing. It's been around a long time. That's one of the safest things. But I don't get spirited anymore. I used to drink the spirits. And now I know why they have it as a controlled substance. Don't worry about back in the Old West, he used to give guys guns and whiskey. Was he really wise? They even have a liquor called Wisers. Distilling spirits. Did you get spirited? You know, one of the things that kept on showing up in Scripture was, be still and know that I am God. Be still. You know that perfectly still is dead? Do you know that if you were having a moral sense in all this, you would be still? That sit out the hippies used to do, they said, we're just going to sit down, man. Hell no, we're not going to go. Right? Great movement until they got up and had a movement. They were sitting, they were resting, right? They were on the ground. Close you could be. They said, I can't stand it anymore. I'm not standing up. I'm sitting down. And then they got up. And then they did the same crap that their parents did. In fact, they did it worse.
Yeah.
There's more trouble in the stuff they did later than even what their parents caused. It's probably post-traumatic syndrome. Post-war. All the after effect that happened from all that calamity. There wasn't a single thing that's ever happened that did not happen with people's voluntary participation. So, if I'm looking at these words, I know it's really long, but I put it in 2 levels there. I just write too big. It wasn't for any other reason. So, stillborn. You were stillborn, right? Couldn't there be an option for people who don't want to participate in something they had nothing to do with it? If you had nothing to do with what went on, you didn't cause your birth event, right? Right? No one chose to be born. It just happened, right? Time and unforeseen occurrence befall us all. So you showed up. I didn't tell you to show them up. So there's choice. Okay? There's participants. would be the opposite of participants?
Non-participants.
Right? Just the opposite. Non-participant. Not an inactive participant. This is where we get a little bit mixed up when I go down this. Because a lot of people say, oh, okay, so would it be okay if we were all working for one big company, right? And one day, Raphael found out that they were sticking poison in the product that we were manufacturing. Remember, that's not God-ufacture, that's manufacturing. I don't know if God really needed us to manufacture anything. But just say we were manufacturing something and we found out that when we got into the ingredients and we looked at the list, it was all full of poisons, toxins. We realized those toxins were killing everybody, but it just took a little bit of time, right? Didn't happen overnight. So we stuck all this stuff in there. Slow death, right? Didn't have to happen immediately. Because what would be the point? If I'm after wealth and greed and all those terrible things, then I certainly, if I needed a lot of people to participate in something, I'm probably going to prolong it a bit. For whatever crazy purpose I have. I'll use everybody till I don't need anything, right? And then I'll stockpile what I need, and then I'm not worried about all the rest of the people. Could that be possibly going on? A doomsday clock for some people who think they're going to survive, but they're making sure they use all the slaves till the end, because they won't know what's going on. So, the opposite being non-participant. If I was a non-participant, and I couldn't give them a hand. No applause. But I run into people and they say, there's no way I'm going to do this, right? Right? Well, isn't this where we kind of get to the dead end? Isn't this the bridge or the final end between good and evil? Wouldn't that make sense that the good have to stop doing evil? Wouldn't that make sense? Now, how would the evil, because we know they're in a minority, very, very specialized. There's not that many of them, but they got a massive amount of ignorant followers who don't know that they're actually the followers of the guys who don't really give two craps about them. When did you ever find wealthy people who gave two craps about what you were doing below? Come on. Be honest. Oh, you know, I build a hospital wing here. Oh, I give 1/80 millionth of my income to build a hospital and I want my name still on it. That's called being infamous. Because they want to be famous, right? Did they really do that for the love of the people? They do that for their own ego. A true gift, you don't need to put your name up on it. And then you do that, it really has kind of a little bit of a construed feeling of not being too nice. That there's ulterior motives going on. So the non-participant situation, to a lot of people, says that's impossible. Well, if the participant realizes that the thing that they're part of is not good, wouldn't conscience click in? Isn't that conscience? That's the highest moral sense that man has. That's called consent. To draw the line and say, I'm not going to do something bad anymore. And this is generally where people go, but I'd have to make a change, right? But I'm too busy. I've got the mortgage. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. They'll come down. That's called rationalizing. Well, that's the problem. There's been a lot of rationalization a long time, but it's very irrational. Because everybody would be trying to prevent something that they're contributing that's going to lead to a disaster anyways. So I kind of have a very, very strong feeling that there is a landlord, right? We run it everywhere. We even think we're the landlord at times. I get a little offended by that term, but I'm just going to leave it alone. Okay? Landlord? If you knew the Landlord-Tenant Act, it protects the tenant more than it does the landlord. If anybody dumb enough to be the landlord is gonna find out that the tenant has more rights. You know why? Anybody know why the tenant has more rights than the landlord under the Ontario Landlord-Tenant Act? Anybody? Just wanna throw a dive in there on that?
Pays the taxes.
You got it. Because the first money to pay the use of the land is the tenant. Because that's the first income that the landlord is deemed to have to declare. So if he doesn't declare that, it's already assumed that the money he received came from the tenant. Whether it's from a physical check, from labor, in exchange, barter, it doesn't matter. Because there would be an implied thought that there was something the tenant was doing that had to have led to the payment of the taxes. And tax is titled absolute wrong. When did you ever think an X was right? X marks the spot, and the spot is a blemish, which is a mark. That's why you're the mark. Possibly the German mark. Oh, you think that's funny? Cops running behind someone? They go marker number. Oh, they got that all on their own. Most people don't realize constable meant church warden. You can look it up. It's there. It's like people telling me, oh, I'm not religious. I said, well, then why do you keep on ending up in court? That's not a church. I said, really? There's pews, there's an altar, there's guys dressed in black. It's a little different. It's a little bit of robbery. Robbery. It's a court of chancery. Chances are you don't know what I know. And it's kind of a need-to-know basis, but you do need to know. So is it possible that maybe we were all confused? Could we just say that on a level? I mean, I'm saying that I know I was confused.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning every day. So even though I'm doing this now, I'm just, hey, really, it's whatever I found. I don't want any payment. God says if I give, he's going to look after me because that's the whole idea of charity, right? Isn't that the greatest thing if everybody's just out there giving? Wouldn't that be the greatest thing the world would have? Wouldn't that be just wonderful to have a community of people who are just giving?
You could never outgive the Creator.
You'd never run out because that's such a immense, vast energy. Because that's all, it's amazing we've taken so much from the planet, it's still giving. It doesn't even ask, it just keeps on giving. So, people say, Dan, how do you live? And I say, you know what? I don't work on any charge, so I'm free of charge, right? Well, could you charge me if I'm free of charge? Would there be a need for me to fill out an idea of solicitation? And I'm not recommending anybody not to pay. Understood what I'm saying here. If you're in something that's happening for the moment, be careful about dishonoring what may be implied by what you're doing. But in the sense of what it is, there was this idea of forsake, and I followed what I felt the best was in the code, and the code said to forsake all. So I gave it all back. I left it that. It's called abandonment, with no intention of returning. So I have no intention of returning, because there's no point to fill it or return. Because I'm not going to solicit. That's why I'm not soliciting you. I hope you know that. Okay, whatever is happening here and today has nothing to do with solicitation. Because solicitation is prostitution. In the law. I know it's hard, and we sell ourselves for wages and money, and I don't want to get into like boggling your brain. It's just the beginning of knowledge, and don't eat yourself alive over that for the moment, because if you don't know any other manner of survival right now, I'm not going to take you down this path. It is a big leap of faith to go the opposite direction. Wouldn't it be crazy to go the opposite way wherever you went? So instead of going downstream, you're going to go upstream. The fish feed upstream, not downstream. They oxygenate their gills going up, not down.
Right.
All the oxygen flows through this way. So you may have to go against what you thought. Okay? But it's very easy to go down with all the rest, right? Right down the current, the currency. To go into the pool. There's not a single thing going on. And believe me, the first guys who came up with the idea of turning fishing for food into fishing for sport were anglers. Because that wasn't fishing for food. You could have gone out and netted them. You didn't need to go out and fish them, right? Fishing isn't catching. That's angling. That's sporting. So our society works on catch and release. That's why they call it the Fish and Game Act, because it's gaming. Because you pay a fee to go out and have a chance. That's a lot of Tag, you're it?
Yeah. On that note, I was just watching one of your videos the other day on the internet, and you were talking about the whole thing about surrendering your license.
Yes.
Giving it back, and that sounds sort of similar to what you're saying right now.
Yeah,
Is that
because
the same idea?
Yeah, because you see, in law, under the secular side, to break the law, in secular understanding, and I'm not trying, this is not, please, I hope I'm not trying to do this to preach at anybody here. I'm just giving you what I found. We have two kind of graces going on. When you're in secular society, they kind of preload up all the indulgences you can do that's wrong. And then you're kind of paying for the right to break the law. That's called grace. That's a license. You have a license to break the law. That's not the kind of spiritual direction I want to take you. Because the spiritual direction is a little bit different than that. Grace is forgiveness based on the idea of knowing that something's wrong and not going back to it. And then if you do fail, there's grace there for that. Because you're not perfect. But the idea of deliberately going in and saying, okay, I'm going to do the following amount of Highway Traffic Act, craziness, for money. Well, you bought all your indulgences ahead of time, and they needed a bond for that. And then they draw out of that, but you're going to pay it back each time for using that. Could you imagine what that one is? What did you use to go get a driver's license? Well, that's a before Christ, though. BC. Okay, so there's a difference going on there. It's like an indulgence. It was very normal in Roman civil law, and the history was the Catholic Church sold indulgences, if you look at the history.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So he said, if you wanted to rape, steal, plunder, do whatever you want, no problem, just pay the church ahead of time. Sounds like a mafia. It's a crime ring, right?
Yep.
There's no problem. You could do it, but you had to pay a tithe for it. So we set up fines. So I hope you're not feeling fine. Because that doesn't mean well. Don't ever say you're feeling fine. I feel bad for you at that point. You see, from a well, you get water. You will never get water from a fine. But you may be the fish that's swimming, right? The fin? Do you think these things are coincidental? There is so much immense knowledge, and what we're trying to say here is, if you don't know what it is, you're not going to see it. And in fact, I've gone so far, I'm trying to remember what I was trying to put there with that G, because I know so many words of the G.
Are you going down the grace route?
No, I wasn't down the grace route on that. But grace is opposite. Anyways, while we're doing this, I think I've run out of thing. My goodness, that's not the first time. Oh, this is ground. Okay, we're gonna do a ground now. Which is pretty symbolic here. A lot of things, but anyways, isn't it funny you see race and grace? Do you know that God's promise was that through Abraham all the nations would be blessed? Well, wouldn't there be something with race and the grace, because all the races come through all the nations? And in fact, it said that Jesus fixed the human race, so we know who wins. It's a fixed race. You know which horse comes in? Maybe they're running a paramutual betting scam. You know, when I took the statement of birth, that's the first thing I related it to. When I broke it all down, it looked like a horse race looking at the parents. And what those horses didn't pass, and then they bet on it, right? Maybe that's an alphabet. I said, let me think now. What was the first bet put on? Would God have a man who would work as a job, and a job is official public business for private dishonest gain, correct? If you want to check that out. Wouldn't that make sense what's going on? Official public business for private dishonest gain? Job. A job is a task. It's not a good thing. It's not a labor of love. It's a labor of a task. A task is something not good. So, there was the book of Job, right? Remember Job? And the test on Job was, the bad guy said he was already kicked out of the covenant, he already caused a lot of problems on the earth, already said that there's no one that's ever going to serve you for love. He only serves you because you give him lots of money. Maybe that's an alphabet. So maybe they're betting on that on one side, but then maybe you're going to do something for love. Because could there be two things going on that paramutual betting scam? Because that's really what they're checking out on that form too. Oh, the ORG and the OLG? You know what the OLG is, Ontario Lottery and Gaming Commission. Then you got the ORG, it used to be at 777 Bay Street. It appears no one got it. They didn't realize that was an underground operation. Because it was in the underground. It was below the ground. And 777 was kind of like blackjack, right? 21. And they moved it over to Young and Shepherd. Maybe they needed a Young Shepherd. 47 Shepherd. They're playing with so many things to give you clues, and they don't know if you're not seeing the trail. I think we're just polluted with so much bad information that the concern is there could be a great loss to the goodness of humanity if they don't wake up, because it still requires you to do something that's right. God's been resting. After he made man, he rested, correct? Who went into occupation? Man. He said, I don't like your garden. I don't like what it is. I don't want you to spread the wild seed. I don't want to do that. I don't want to spread the wild seed. I want to go and make an impression. So he made an impression. To make an impression, he had to make a depression to till the ground, right? We don't have a till going on at the cache. So we're no longer in the garden, now we're customers, and only people who are not part of something pay customs, right? On something that's been imported. You ever wonder why they have customers? Doesn't that make no sense to you? Why are you paying customs? What the heck is going on that every till has got customs going on? It's not because of the product, it's because of the money coming in. The money's coming in from a foreign source, not the product. We always think, well, there is products coming in from a foreign source. Not going to get down that, but why would there be a custom on something that's on the soil? Go to a farmer's market. They'll have a till going on. He likes to till the soil. That's why the first tiller was Cain. He liked to till. God knew he was selfish, knew he had a problem. There's arm and farmer. And farmer means in law, a tax collector. I didn't make that up. That's not a man, that's a husband. That's a husband man. You have to follow what's going on in every single thing to see what's going on, because you kind of miss the story. And if you miss the story, you're not going to get the full picture. What I'm trying to do in most of this video is just kind of make you kind of like stop and say, I don't think I know. So it's going to take some due diligence. So how would I become someone who isn't going to fail the test, who passed the test of Job? Because Job did pass the test. And what did God do? He rewarded him, right? Oh, ward is. Let's put back in the ward, which would go inward, right? Why are they trying to arrest everybody? Because no one will arrest. Because they've got the privates in a mixed war with the public. The public guys wear a badge to be in the public, but they're really in the private anyways. I hope this isn't messing you up. This is when Dale and I go get another glass of wine. But this is what's going on. You see, if you don't know what's going on, we had a seminar one time and some guy, he thought he knew the banking. He could not get his mind past that. I said, well, think about it for a second. The governments don't have any money. They have a receiver general. They're in bankruptcy protection with a receiver. So they don't have anything. So what would be the easiest way to cause a situation? Well, wouldn't it be better to work for the people who work for the bank who are lending the money in, so we get a private social insurance number, to work for the private Federal Reserve banks, so they can do what they did to the native Indians? They just took their land and they said, don't worry about it, we'll just give it back to you. We call that a reserve. Once you call that a Federal Reserve? Just a second, you must have thought I owned the land. I thought God owned the land. Just thinking here, we used to believe, the natives thought we believed that we were the land. Oh, no, no, no. I have to change your thought. You are no longer going to be a native, okay? I better write the board clean here. This is where it gets too funny. It's not funny, though. I hope the natives don't think I'm trying to make light of them, because we're all in the same game. Don't worry. They didn't think that we were any better than them, because they went after everybody after that. The guy's running this crazy scheme we're about to put here. See, the natives, okay, getting a little sloppy there. Okay? The natives didn't know what they were going to do. See, they were natives, so they were original already. But we had to create a little game here. So what we did was, we had to call them something different, which AB meant to separate. So we called them AB originals. I'm getting way too sloppy here.
Is that an alternative?
Now, we could have just said original. Why did we put AB on there? Well, I looked at Babel and it said separate. To separate. To separate original. So no longer they're an original. We're going to call them an AB original. And I know I need an A and a B side of the company. And I'm going to let them decide what status they are. But I'll let you sell a few cigarettes. Give you a few little perks. So we got the AB originals. Well, I know what that really is. That's really when I change something. That's called an alternative. Because I changed what was once native and now I made it an alternative.
Back to AC current.
You know what you've really done there? Exactly, you know what we did there? An alternative. That's not what it originally was, and I made it alternative. It's a change. So they changed the name. That's called a minor variance. They do that. In fact, even the statement of birth logo and the Ontario Municipal Board for the municipal applications for minor variances on properties that are going to have a little change made to them. So the property wants to do something a little different than what's there, but they think it's just a minor variance. Well, they made a minor variance of your Christian name or your given name, and they changed it to something else. They made a minor variance. Do you think something's happening? Landlord tenant tribunal use the same logo?
This has been well thought out.
You couldn't come up with this. Be in awe. Because this system has come from people who are lettered in the law. And those that don't know the law, according to the scripture, would die like a beast. That's be east. Man's best friend, we say in our crazy society, is a dog? Isn't that the opposite of God? How ridiculous is that? I mean, I like my dog, but I'm not going to make him my best friend. I'm supposed to be a best friend with God. So, we've got something going on that's merged two things together. And if you're having any concern of where I got this, all this, you know what this led to? I originally went into the Bible and I said, okay, fine, I want to really know about the Bible because I don't know. I kind of grew up in a religious home. I had a pastor, father, and I said, okay, fine. Maybe he was living in the past. Or I'm supposed to be living in the present because I was a gift, right? A given. That's a given, right? It's a gift. Isn't that a present? That's foreordained?
Yeah.
Common name means outlaw, addition. Commoners were peasants. Scum, criminals who can't make this good. There's no possible way. When you put those two things together, don't think that's just confusion. Now you're a broker. You're a middleman. It's one or the other. Now one's a given, one's not. One's acquitted, one's blackstoned. We read Blackstone's commentary? That's by chance. He's just telling you in code. They just called him Blackstone. Black's Law. There's another law writer called Anger. Oh, doesn't that make you warm and friendly with that? The whole law is about penalty. So when people ask me how I live, I said I'm very gifted. Because I don't charge you for anything. No contracts, no pain, no contractions. My mother had all the labor pains, all the contractions, all the terms, 37 weeks, all the conditions. Do you think they gave you the clues? So, now, we're only going to put this one thing. I'm going to read you out of a transcript. There was a lot of people throwing around that statement of birth, and we're not going to talk about all these guys, because, I was going to do a parable, and it was mocking a few guys that are out there right now. And I'd have to have everybody's consent to go with that one. We may have to, it's a parable. I mean, one of my friends wants me to do it, but I'm not going to.
Chicken. Big chicken.
No. That would be foul.
You would have a posse after.
So, we have a transcript. It's a case. Some crazy guy kept on trying to put his statement of birth on the record into a court. And it was all over some craziness over having a dog that he wasn't supposed to have. We won't call him Clifford. So the dog in the case, the problem was this guy kept on jamming it in. How many people have heard about putting a statement of birth in the court? Come on. How many people have heard that? This is not new news. Well, shouldn't you know why you're doing something before you do it? What is that birth record? It's not sealed. It's in a frame. It's only on file. Ever talk to a cop and says he took something down? If he hasn't laid the charge, it's only on file. No charge has ever been laid. Well, there's a statute of limitations on that. Either lay the charge or else. There's been no charge ever gone through with. Because the one who laid the charge would have to charge over what the use of that property was that was on there if he didn't like what it was. So a statement was made. So we were trying to jam this in, but they don't understand the document. I feel bad for them because they don't even know what the document is. And it's got two seals. It's got a clear seal and a black seal. That's Roman civil law. It's indication one was acquitted and one was blackballed. Even the Masons do that for bringing someone in. But it's not on the inside of that record. It's only on file. It's just a statement. It's just a claim. You had nothing to do with it until you entered in. And then the court issued an award. Award of the state. They said, we set aside the judgment, we'll set off the two jurisdictions, this is the only way we can figure it out. So they put a comma in between the two sentences, because that's what a comma is for. To set off two ideas or sentences. I call that the set off. Because, well, in code, Set is really the root of Seth. And Seth replaced Abel after Cain disabled Abel with this club. That's all by chance, right? If you follow the code. So, they're responsible. It had nothing to do with you. You're just a child. Can't harm a child. Now, you could have been the citizen held in legal detention when you decided to take it over yourself, and that's stupid. Shouldn't have that happening. Here, just take this. So anyways, in this court case, they kept on shoving in the statement of birth record. And the statement of birth record was causing a problem, but it wasn't settling anything. They kept on moving it, moving it, moving it. During the process of someone trying to put this birth record in on the record, it led to the fact that they were going to have to deal with it at one point, and I don't know what possibly was the intent of the party who was doing it, because I don't think he knew what he was doing. And he was honest with me because I spoke with him.